Hi, it's Elizabeth. So today I want to talk about strategic relationships. So in my work with thought leaders, we talk about strategic relationships a lot. Here's why. Whether your goal is to launch your book, attract more speaking gigs, attract more clients, build referral relationships, or even change the conversation in your industry, it all comes down to relationships. So in the world of thought leadership, there's two basic types of relationships. There's your one-to-many relationships, and these are the relationships you're going to build through your blog, your newsletter, your podcast if you have one. So this one-to-many communication that happens via social media as well. And then the second type is those one-to-one relationships. And let me define what I mean by these relationships. Strategic partnerships are those relationships with key individuals and groups that serve a similar audience, share your values, and could potentially be interested in your message and what you have to offer, and vice versa. So this is your industry association that is actively looking to partner with thought leaders. They may be hosting a conference. They may feature thought leaders as part of their regular newsletter or podcast or webinar series. These are the type of relationships that we're talking about. And there's a problem around these relationships. I've noticed over the years that thought leaders intellectually know these relationships are really important, but they often feel stuck. One reason may be that you're not sure who exactly to reach out to, so you don't do anything or the actions you're taking aren't successful. And then the second problem is I know who I'm trying to reach, and I'm working really hard, and I'm really busy trying to grow all kinds of relationships, and I don't have anything to show for it. So there's a truth that may not feel so comforting, but the truth is that thought leaders don't give this process the time and attention that it truly deserves. We take a one-size-fits-all approach and wonder why the generic email that we've been told by said guru that will open a door doesn't get a response. We skip over important details. We expect immediate results. And in our personal lives, we know better. With our spouses, partners, significant others, and family, we wouldn't dare be so generic and glib, right? But we don't always apply this principle when it comes to our professional relationships. So I want to share 3 strategies that you can use to build better strategic partnerships, because this is a very important discipline and pathway to reaching a much wider audience more quickly than you could on your own. So the first one is pay attention to the details. So instead of sending a generic email to pitch yourself as a speaker or guest, get to know the person or organization and identify ways you can contribute. What can you find out about the goals that they're working on? What are their initiatives, and how is your message relevant to what they are working on? Take time to understand how they partner with other thought leaders so that when it does come time to make an ask or start the conversation, you can start it in a really relevant way. The second one is to assess the timing. So imagine the game of double dutch on the playground. Now, I may have just lost some of our younger viewers today. Double dutch is that jump rope game where 2 people hold these long jump ropes and they're spinning them in opposite directions, and the kid on the playground is trying to jump into the middle of those ropes, and it's, as you can imagine, it's all about the timing. So timing sometimes is never perfect, but if we pay attention, there are obvious times that it's not good to reach out. So imagine the organization you're trying to build a relationship with is hosting their conference in 3 days. Probably not a good time to reach out and pitch yourself as a speaker. Wait a couple of weeks, congratulate them on a great conference, and follow up when they're less distracted. Or if you're trying to build a relationship with an individual author, don't email them the day before their launch and ask for something. That's not good timing. Sometimes timing is a little more subtle, and this has to do with the amount of rapport that you've built. How well do you know this organization or individual author or speaker? Do you need to build more rapport, or do you need to have an ask that's easier to say yes to? More on that in another episode, but assess the timing. And then the third one is to focus on Thanks, Donna. Glad you like that point. The third principle is to focus on the relationship versus the transaction. So it's, if you have a book launch coming up, if you're eager to impact your industry in a more significant way, it's easy to get caught up in this urgency to secure more opportunities and interviews, but this urgency can cause you to approach things as a transaction, and we all know how it feels when we're on the receiving end of an intention like that. We can feel used, we can feel like we're just a means to an end for someone, and even when that's not our intention, if we don't check our urgency and we get impatient, then that can come through. And as Michael and Port and I discussed in our book we wrote together called The Contrarian Effect, this is not a numbers game. Strategic relationships is about being intentional and purposeful and committing to the long haul of building these relationships. So two things here: seek to give versus get. Think about the person on the receiving end and how you can be a resource and useful to them. And then secondly, look for a natural starting point and build from there. You may be honest with yourself and say, I really want to be a keynote for this organization, or I want to be their signature thought leader, but the reality is you may not be able to start there. They may need a guest for their upcoming podcast, or from a newsletter that they have coming out, or another initiative. So be flexible, pay attention to the signals, and find that natural starting point, because it's about building a bigger relationship. Some groups and individuals you may have multiple chances to collaborate with them, others just one or two, but regardless, you want to treat it as a relationship and not a transaction. So there are some strategies that you can use to build more strategic relationships for your thought leadership and business. I'd love to hear from you guys what strategies you're using right now that are really working to not only build those meaningful connections, but to reach that wider audience. Of course, if you have questions, always leave them in the comments. And thanks so much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you guys soon.